999 rescue.
There are 80,999 calls made every day.
Hello, what's the problem? It's the police.
Can I have a police? They stole my money.
Who stole your money?
Some are more serious than others.
Yeah, he's not breathing.
Okay, blow the little boy flat on his back for me there.
I know he's flat on his back.
On rare occasions, the call is to report a death.
Emergency service.
I've run over my wife who's been feeding the cows, and one of the cows must have known.
Some people broke into her house. Okay. You stole all his money. Okay, Tim.
But what if the caller
She's not moving.
Right, she's not moving at all.
is in fact a killer?
Someone been stabbed, I think they did.
Prescott is a residential suburban area. It's positioned in Knowsley, which is just outside the city centre of Liverpool.
Not much there, to be honest. Just shops, a few shops. Everyone knows everyone. It's like quite small.
In terms of crime, we don't get a lot of cases from Prescott at the Crown Court. It's a fairly sort of quiet place.
That was until the 13th of October 2011.
He started abusing me when he's drunk. Guns gone off and he's got shot.
I liked his wittiness, dry sense of humour. It made me laugh.
Smile. He had the smile that could lift anybody's day. He was a nice guy. He was dead smiley, dead happy. He had time for everybody and anybody, and if he could help you fix something, he would.
Christopher Honor was very much a sort of happy-go-lucky guy, lived in the moment, didn't worry about things, just sort of took it as things came along.
Just funny. So we just laughed at everything, usually at my expense.
Lovely fella. Chris would put his coat down in a puddle for you to walk over it, just so you was okay. Do you get what I mean? He was so liked, it was unbelievable.
Christopher Honor was born and bred in Prescott and met his wife Kat when they were both teenagers.
I loved going out on his bike with him. But that was his obsession, was bikes.
He liked fixing them, riding them. Just anything to do with bikes, really, or cars. Just like stuff like that.
Chris was always the kid who you took your motorbike to get fixed. Chris could strip and build a motorbike in a day. Every nut and bolt. Every nut and bolt. And you could drive that motorbike perfect. Do you get what I mean? No matter what motorbike it was.
He was really, really good. Really, really talented with his hands. That should have been his forte in life, really. Should have stayed with bikes.
Whilst growing up in Prescott, Christopher Honor met Christopher Strettle.
They'd grown up together, lived in the same area, and had this same love of motorbikes, and that was a big bond between them.
I went down the high street the other day.
They just hung out together. I must admit I didn't really like him at first. Sometimes he was arrogant and cocky, but I don't know whether that's just the way he come across. Once you really knew him, he wasn't sort of like that. He could be quite a nice person.
As Honor and Strettle grew up, they remained great friends, with Christopher Strettle acting as best man at Christopher Honor's wedding.
Ready? Good to be smart, yeah? You're laying the law down to me.
When the friends were in their early 30s, Christopher Honor had discovered that Christopher Strettle had had an affair with a member of his family.
I think you better leave me! Get out!
And their friendship ended. It wasn't long before Christopher Honor's world was turned upside down.
Christopher Honor and his wife separated.
He was somebody who had clearly fallen on hard times, found it difficult to hold down a job.
In 2007, Christopher Honor was arrested for being caught in possession of 7 kilos of cannabis. He was sentenced to 32 months in Walton Prison.
Chris come out of jail harder than he went in. Do you get what I mean? It affects people in different ways. Chris went in there timid, right, and grew up in there. He grew up in there, he come out like a man. He's on the fitness thing every day, he's on a regular diet. Do you get what I mean? Like, he looked good in the jug, no ale. Do you know what I mean? He was making a little bit of hooch every now and again. But you can't have a drink a day like he could out here. Do you know what I mean? Left to his own devices.
I was happy when he got out. I was at school, so I went straight from school and met him. And then we had a bit of a welcome home party. Yeah, he was still the same happy person, but he was like buzzing about it. He was really happy to be free.
Shortly after his release from prison, Christopher Honor received a Facebook message from Christopher Strettle.
Chris had messaged me dad to ask did he want to be his mechanic for the race team. So that was how they got back in touch, was over bikes.
Yeah, I was shocked. Because I never thought he'd speak to him ever again, really.
He said don't speak to him. I don't think it's a good idea, but obviously my dad with bikes did it.
All right. Yeah, all right. Legs a bit sore, but you know.
A lot had changed for Christopher Strettle, whilst the pair had lost contact.
Christopher Strettle was involved in a very serious motorbike accident, which left him very badly disabled.
He had use of his legs, that he was an incomplete paraplegic.
Get your lift round that.
He managed to be able to sue the garage that had been maintaining his motorbike and came out of it very nicely financially. So he was a man of means after this.
He began buying properties, business properties and residential properties. He began opening up a number of sort of local business type ventures.
I got another earring soon.
He was just an alright fella, bit of a businessman. Buy and sell cars and a couple of lannies, and he out with his dogs, hunting and so on. Do you know what I mean? He was a bit of a gamesman. But he was on the morphine, weren't he? On the morphine all the time, constantly, after he'd had the accident.
Having given his friend a job as a mechanic, Strettle also let Honor rent the flat above his wife's hairdressing salon.
He asked me to move in with him, so I said yeah I would. So I think he got lonely, I think. I needed someone to keep him in check. I was at college and he was usually with Chris.
I don't know what they did all day, but they were together all day. Every day.
I couldn't believe when the ex-missus told me that Chris was hanging around with Strettle and that. I was like, what are you playing that with him, lad? You know it's going to end up in tears, it always does.
Christopher Honor had inherited £7,000 from the estate of his late aunt, so obviously he was in a happy mood.
I'd gone home to see my dad, but then he was having a drink with his mates and I didn't feel well, so I said I'll go and stay at my mum's tonight. And then he was like, no, it's alright, I'll get rid of everyone and we'll just like have a night in. But I said, no, it's alright, you're enjoying yourself, so I went and stayed at my mum's.
Take care, yeah.
He was at home with a new lady friend, Catherine Taylor.
I think she was somebody he'd known previously and had recently started a relationship with.
And they were having a few drinks and just generally having a good time, playing lots of music, enjoying themselves.
After a night of partying, Christopher Honor and Kathy Taylor went to bed around 3 a.m. They woke the following morning around 8 a.m.
Feeling predictably hungover.
Well, I've seen you looking better.
And not in a very good state.
Hey, do you want to get a few more in?
Aye, why not? Let's do it. Hair of the dog.
At 10 to 9 in the morning, one of the employees in the hair salon turns up and finds lots of bin bags outside which relate to the flat above. And she can also hear some music, so that's obviously a problem. She calls Leslie Strettle, who's Christopher Strettle's wife, about this, and she then comes down to the salon.
They'd made some representations to Christopher Honor to lower the music in the flat. And I believe at first he did lower the music in the flat. However, after a period of time, the music went back up again and it was louder than ever.
Lots of thumping, heavy rock music. So bad that the funeral directors who were further along the parade come along to the salon to complain about it. So Leslie Strettle, who's gone home, is then summoned back to the salon.
Leslie took it upon herself to go up to the flat. And she obviously saw that it was in a mess and she wasn't happy with the condition of the flat.
I told you about this before, Chris. What the hell's been going on in here?
She'd actually warned Christopher Honor previously about the upkeep of the flat and noise levels, etc., and how he was behaving.
It's not good enough.
Leslie Strettle then left the flat straight away.
She rings her husband and within minutes he's driven over.
Hey Chris, where are you, mate? I need to talk to you. I've had some complaints about the noise.
Christopher Honor was effing and blinding at him, and then suddenly Christopher Honor produced a gun and came down the stairs towards him.
I've done everything for you.
Hey, what you do?
You can't come round here.
Calm down, yeah.
You can't kick me out of my own house.
Calm down,
I've done everything for you, mate. Everything.
Calm down, yeah.
With a shot having been fired, Christopher Strettle drove 3 miles to his home, at which point he called 999.
Police emergency.
I live at 3 Park Avenue. I've got a shop with a lodger above and he's drunk. I've gone to ask him to turn the music down. He started abusing me and pulled a gun on me. So I pulled the gun away and the gun's gone off and he's got shot.
Strettle's a victim. He was in fear of his life and was defending himself against an armed man.
On the 13th of October 2011, Christopher Strettle arrived at the flat he rented out to his friend Christopher Honor after reports that loud music was being played.
Christopher Honor was effing and blinding at him, and then suddenly Christopher Honor produced a gun and came down the stairs towards him.
After a struggle, the gun accidentally discharged. In a blind panic, Strettle fled the scene, drove home and called 999.
Police emergency.
Started abusing me and pulled a gun on me. So I pulled the gun away and the gun's gone off and he's got shot. I was frightened. I just got in the car, didn't know what I was doing. It's just a dream.
He's just defending himself. He's done nothing wrong. It was a total accident.
Within minutes of the 999 call being received, the police were dispatched to the Strettle home on Park Avenue.
As soon as a firearm was mentioned, armed response officers would have been deployed to the scene. Early indications in the investigation was that it could have been a fatal injury.
I was going past, like on the bus, it was just all cordoned off, thought like something must have gone on at the shop. And then like as I got further up the road, someone got on the bus, it was like someone's been shot or stabbed, and then I just kind of knew then, like, I don't know, I had a gut feeling that something was wrong.
Katie rang me up saying there's all police and an ambulance outside the flat and I can't get through to my dad. Will you check he's okay? And as I got there and asking the police what had happened and saying my daughter lived there with her dad, and they said, well, she's not in there now. And I said, no, I know she isn't. They said, but her dad, I think her dad is. And they took me away in a police car. They said he'd been shot, but he was in hospital.
Whilst police tended to the scene, officers were arriving at Christopher Strettle's home on Park Avenue.
When police first arrived at his home, Strettle told the police the same thing that he'd said in his 999 call.
I went over to visit the flat. He came down the stairs with a gun. Tried to attack me. It just went off. I just left.
The police noticed that he had some cuts to his hands.
During the initial 999 call, he informed us that he'd had some sort of struggle with his dogs at the time.
I got between the dogs. They were scrapping. Got caught with a couple of bites. Had to change my clothes as well. I was cleaning up some dog mess and got some on my clothes, so I changed them.
So in that time, before the police had got to the address, he'd actually changed his clothing and was unable to provide us with the clothing that he was wearing at the time of the shooting. There was communication then from the officers to ourselves, who were still at the scene of the shooting, and a decision was made at that point to arrest Christopher Strettle on suspicion of Section 18 wounding, which is a serious assault, and also possession of a firearm. Leslie Strettle was also located at the home address with Christopher Strettle. We knew that she had been present at about the time of the shooting. She also had been inside that flat. The decision was taken to arrest Leslie Strettle on suspicion of the wounding and also possession of a firearm.
It was after about an hour. They were taking me from the police station to the hospital, and I remember it come over the policeman's radio. He said something to me, and he said, "Oh, take her back in." So he took me back into the police station, and he said I was now deceased.
Despite repeated attempts to resuscitate Christopher Honor, he suffered multiple heart failure and was pronounced dead at 12:51 p.m.
Just didn't believe it at first.
As soon as I got there, that's when my mum turned up, like in the police van.
And Katie was there and she just kept saying she wanted a dad, she wanted a dad. She wouldn't move from the spot, so
she had to tell me that he was dead.
I was just total shock. Like, who would shoot him? And what, so it was just horrendous. The two girls, I had to sort of try and be strong for them too, but it was awful. Yeah.
Shortly after Christopher Strettle and his wife were arrested, the police's major concern was to locate the potentially loaded firearm.
We'd executed an initial examination of the scene and no firearm had been identified or recovered. Christopher Strettle had intimated in his 999 call that he'd left it.
Where is the gun now?
I don't know. I just left it.
And obviously that wasn't the case, so we needed urgently to locate that firearm. As the investigation progressed, a bullet casing had been found at the bottom of the stairs inside the flat, and that also was a 9mm casing.
At the police station, Christopher Strettle was being interviewed by the police.
We got a call that the tenant was causing trouble upstairs. They were playing music really loud, and I went in. I was stood at the bottom of the stairs, and he came down the stairs. He was effing and blinding. Like he was drunk, like really aggressive. Like, that's when I saw he had a gun.
Further detail was asked of him in relation to this struggle and the course of events that led to the shooting. So the positioning of Christopher Honor on the stairs, the positioning of Christopher Strettle at the bottom of the stairs, and whether he'd actually moved up the stairs.
Can you point out where this altercation happened?
We were at the bottom of the stairs. It happened here. Came at me like this. I knocked the gun out of his hand and it was there because it was on the stairs.
He knocked the gun out of his hands. That's something that wasn't mentioned in the initial 999 call, so straight away really there was some discrepancies and some changes to his accounts that occurred during the first interview.
And I picked the gun up, I wrapped my finger around the trigger I stumbled back and it had gone off. I left, got in the car.
There was no gun left at the scene.
It's a bit of a blur, you know. I took the gun with me. I didn't know what I was doing, I panicked.
And he drove off, and he drove directly home. But at some point during his drive, he just threw the firearm out of the window.
On the 13th of October 2011, Merseyside police responded to a 999 call in Prescott.
I've got a shop with a lodger above, and he's drunk. I've gone to ask him to turn the music down. He started abusing me and pulled a gun on me.
Investigating officers soon realised that there was more to the story than what Christopher Strettle and his wife Leslie were telling them.
I took the gun with me. It's a bit of a blur, you know. I didn't know what I was doing, I panicked.
Christopher Strettle was more involved in this incident than he tried to make out in his initial 999 call. We had the potential in the middle of the day in a busy residential area to have a loaded firearm lying at the side of the road. Trained teams were searching along the edges of the pavements and the roads along the route that he'd taken, and we never recovered the firearm.
With no sign of the gun, police were convinced Christopher Strettle was withholding the facts of what had actually happened in the flat.
During the investigation, Strattle's wife Leslie had also been interviewed.
She was present in the hallway whilst Christopher Strettle was at the bottom of the stairs and confirmed her husband's account that there'd been a struggle.
I didn't see anything. I just heard it bang.
And at that point, she left the premises. But she told us that her husband had made a significant comment.
I saw my husband come out. He said, "Bless, I've shot him."
They got into different vehicles and Christopher Strettle drove home. Leslie Strettle said that she followed him, and as she got near to a home address, she seen him at the side of the road, so she pulled up behind him and she went to him, and at that point she says he produced this handgun.
I took the gun from my husband.
Where's the gun now?
I drove to Taylor Park, got out the car and I threw it in the lake.
As the interviews progressed, it became clear to me that the initial discrepancies that we identified in the investigation were becoming larger, and there was more doubt in relation to the credibility of the account that Christopher Strettle was giving us. There was extensive searches conducted at the lake. Leslie Strettle was taken to the scene and she pointed out to us where she said she threw that firearm into the lake. The extensive searches never recovered it, and if it was in that lake it would have been recovered.
Christopher Strettle's account of the shooting was that he had wrestled the gun of Christopher Honor, which had then accidentally discharged. But the Strettles' conspiracy to conceal the weapon only heightened the police's suspicions.
A full forensic and ballistic examination of the scene was undertaken, and what we found was there was some small amounts of blood splatter at the top of the stairs, on the walls. There was also a very small amount of blood on the carpet at the top of the stairs. There was some sort of blood marks which appeared to be coming down the stairs. There was no evidence of blood at the bottom of the stairs. The blood that we had on a forensic analysis was more consistent with Christopher Honor being shot whilst he stood at the top of the stairs. We uncovered some CCTV of Christopher Strettle's car arriving at the scene, and you could see Christopher Strettle come out of the car and go towards the flat door. You also seen him leaving. We had an officer repeatedly view that CCTV, and on further analysis, his movements when he got out of that vehicle became questionable. You could see a key movement where he appeared to reach into the back of his waistband, which would be typical of someone who's carrying a handgun.
With CCTV evidence suggesting it was in fact Christopher Strettle who had brought the gun to the flat, police increased the pressure on their prime suspect.
Okay, alright, I did bring the gun. But I was bringing it back. It wasn't mine. It was Chris's.
So he was returning this gun to his friend. At the same time, he was going round to deal with him for being a drunken lodger and causing his wife some sort of issues that morning.
I got the phone call telling me he'd been causing trouble. I thought, I've had enough of this. I don't want to keep this gun here any longer. It was worrying me sick. I took the gun and I put it in the waistband of my pants.
Meanwhile, the police ballistic team at the scene had made a remarkable discovery.
The forensics also found that the bullet had gone through the ceiling. They found the hole in the ceiling and that it had gone through and landed in the brickwork of the loft.
So the ballistic examination indicated that the bullet had travelled in a straight line up the staircase, through the ceiling into the loft. We had the casing at the bottom of the stairs, and we had the blood splatter analysis, which indicated that the victim had been at the top of the stairs and had moved down the stairs after undergoing some sort of injury.
What happened when you got to the flat?
I told Chris he had a week to clear out of the flat. I took the gun out to give it him back. I said, "Yeah, you can have this as well." He said, "What have you brought that here for? I don't want it." He went mad. He came down the stairs, effing and blinding. I pulled the hammer back. There was a bad reaction. I was scared. I pulled the trigger. I didn't know it was loaded. I thought it was aimed higher than it was.
What we would have expected in the circumstances of an accidental discharge of a firearm would be some sort of gunshot residue or burning effect, potentially on clothing. We didn't have Christopher Strettle's clothing because he'd changed and we were unable to locate his clothing. We did have Christopher Honor's clothing and there was no indication of any gunshot residue or any burning or anything like that that you would potentially expect from a firearms discharge at close range.
The bullet trajectory and the lack of gunpowder residue told police a very different version of events. The close proximity struggle described by Christopher Strettle was not in keeping with the evidence.
The more accounts that we got from Christopher Strettle, and as the police activity around the investigation unfolded, we were presented with more conflicting evidence. A search was conducted of the Strettle home address and there were a number of items recovered which were of interest to us.
In the master bedroom, in the bedside cabinet, they found 2 magazines of live 9mm ammunition which actually matched the shell casing found at the scene.
This led to further inconsistencies. He told us now that he was returning the gun to Christopher Honor and he didn't know that the gun was loaded. So if he was returning it, for whatever reason, why would he not also return the bullets, the magazines, any other component parts of any firearms, if, as he made out, it didn't belong to him, it belonged to Christopher Honor.
As Christopher Strettle's story started to crumble, the police made the decision to charge him for the murder of his friend. On the 13th of October 2011, a 999 call was received by Merseyside police.
I've got a shop with a lodger above.
Hey Chris, where are you, mate? I need to talk to you.
and he's drunk. I had gone to ask him to turn the music down. He started abusing me and pulled a gun on me. The gun's gone off, and he's got shot.
But the evidence proved a very different story.
He said Les, I've shot him.
There was no gun left at the scene.
I took the gun with me.
I took the gun from my husband and I threw it in the lake.
With the Strattles changing their story and the forensic evidence mounting up, the police made the decision to charge Christopher Strattle with the murder of his best friend, Christopher Honor. Five months after Christopher Honor had died, Christopher Strattle's murder trial began at Liverpool Crown Court.
Christopher Strattle was tried for the murder of Christopher Honor. However, he still maintained that this was an accident, and that was a case of manslaughter.
Christopher Honor was a very popular man, so he got a lot of friends and supporters there who wanted to know what had happened.
As the defence team started their case, Christopher Strattle was called to the stand.
Christopher Strattle consistently attended court in a wheelchair, and there was significant play, and I felt, of his vulnerability and the fact that he needed a wheelchair and he wanted himself to be seen again as a victim. During the trial, he maintained the account that he'd finally given us, that he'd gone round to the address to have a conversation with Christopher Honor.
I decided to take his gun back to him. I didn't want to keep it anymore. It was making me anxious. Hey Chris, I need a word with you.
What's up, mate?
No, I've had enough of this. You need to get out of the flat. The noise is too much here.
But this is my home, mate.
And I'm not looking after this for you any longer, all right? I pulled the trigger. I thought it was going to dry fire, but it went off.
Christopher Honor was portrayed as being somebody who not only drank, but used drugs.
He just became so aggressive and argumentative. You only had to open your mouth and he would think you were going to have a go.
Which all supported his defence that he was the sort of person who might possess firearms and of whom he would be in fear.
Once the defence team had rested their case, all eyes turned to the prosecution.
The prosecution said that this was a case of murder. It was perfectly clear that he'd taken the gun to the premises, it was his weapon, that he discharged the weapon with deadly accuracy into the chest of his victim, and anybody who shoots somebody in the chest must intend to kill him.
In addition to forensic evidence, the prosecution had one further ace card. An eyewitness to the shooting, Kathy Taylor, was called to the stand.
Catherine Taylor had spent the night at the flat after having partied the evening before with Christopher Honor and was in the flat when the shooting occurred.
She said that he'd spoken to his landlord and that there was some dispute over money.
There were arrears of rent, money owing, and that Christopher Honor was due to go to the bank that very morning in order to get money to pay Christopher Strattle.
She said at some point later on that morning, an unknown female had entered the flat, seen the two of them together, and then left without saying anything. She said she'd got up to go to the bathroom, and as she's walked past the stairwell, she's looked down and she saw a male standing at the bottom of the stairs. Again, she described this male as the landlord. She then goes into the bathroom and uses the bathroom.
Chris, where's my money?
I'm going to the bank now. What do you mean, mate?
I heard the shot and I saw Chris Honor collapse on the stairs.
And she fully expected that person to come up the stairs and potentially shoot her. So as you can imagine, she was in an extremely distressed state. She then says that when she opened the door, she fully expected to see Christopher Honor on the floor at the top of the stairs. But he was gone.
I think the most harrowing part was the CCTV footage.
After Christopher Strattle leaves the flat. Christopher Honor actually follows him outside the flat, and he's seen on CCTV to walk out of the flat door into the main parade of shops. He's actually seen on CCTV to open his arms out. He was looking at his friend who was sitting in his car, who was looking back at him, and he had his arms open as if he's saying, "What have you done? Why have you done?"
With a spreading chest wound and the completely callous behaviour of the defendant in his car, looking towards him, clearly seeing what sort of state he was in, and leaving somebody who had been his friend, whose best man he had been, to die on the pavement.
I don't think he had enough time to come up with a really plausible explanation. He's in a confused state. He's not thinking straight. He's trying his best to think through things. He's got a general understanding of a criminal investigation around the use of firearms. He knows a key part of the investigation will be clothing, the swabbing of hands. So I think he's just thought, I have to do something with my hands, I have to do something with the clothing. But he's not realising that what he's doing there raises suspicions.
He didn't want to make the 999 call, or perhaps, putting it more accurately, wasn't going to. He was persuaded to do so, but having been persuaded to do so, he gave a false account which must have been agreed with his wife beforehand. They must have discussed it, talked about it.
The police are coming. I'll tell them Chris came at me with a gun and I don't know where it is. I'll stay here and call 999. They'll come and I'll be here to speak to them. You need to go now.
Where?
I don't know where. Anywhere. Just get rid of it. I need to change my clothes.
For God's sake, Chris. Why? Why did you have to shoot him?
Just get rid of it. Go.
Okay, his name is Christopher Honor. He's just got out to prison. I have tried to help him out, give him a job.
When you dissect the information that Christopher Strettle's giving at 999 call, it's very interesting.
He was trying to, all the way through, come up with some sort of story or narrative of his own.
I've got a cut to my fingers. The dogs were fighting when I got in. I had to separate them.
You would expect the reason for the 999 call would be to call for help for the victim, but in fact Christopher Strettle is putting in lots of information about himself rather than what's happened to the poor victim.
I'm disabled as well.
It takes away the importance of what he's actually done, and he sort of downplays his involvement in it, when essentially he's just been involved in a fatal shooting of his best friend.
I was frightened. I just got in the car, didn't know what I was doing. It's just a dream.
The reality is Christopher Strettle knew exactly what he had done, and when he sat in his car he saw his friend come out, blood beginning to show up from the chest wound, and saw him collapse on the pavement.
The prosecution questioned the ownership of the firearm used in the murder.
The defendant had an interest in firearms. He'd been the owner of a valid firearms certificate until about a year before this happened.
Strettle's always been involved with guns. He's a bit of a hunting life fella.
Shooting vermin, shooting rabbits, that kind of thing.
This honest, never ever owned a gun in his life. Never ever touched a gun in his life. Never ever. 1,000,000%. But Strettle was a hunter. He had the killer instinct in him. Chris Honor never. Strettle was the man with the rifle shooting the rabbits in the field. Chris Honor was the one riding the motorbike, jumping the hills.
It was pretty obvious from the accuracy of the shot that he was expert in handling firearms of that kind.
Early on in the investigation, we struggled to understand why this incident had happened. And why this friendship had turned. But why would Christopher Strettle turn up at his friend's address with a loaded firearm?
It was a friendship. It wasn't a very equal relationship.
I think there was dependence by Christopher Honor on Christopher Strettle. He did do a lot to help him at a time when he needed it most. Christopher Strettle had, by his actions, developed a hold over his friend, which he found useful from time to time.
I think that Christopher Strettle had felt disrespected by Christopher Honor for some period of time.
Chris?
He was just a bit of a control freak. Didn't really like it if he wasn't with him, if you know what I mean. Kind of always wanted my dad with him.
There was animosity between them all their lives. They'd argue like brothers every day. Do you get what I mean? Brothers who didn't like each other.
Where's me money?
I'm going to the bank now.
Too late for that.
What do you mean, mate?
The jury deliberated for nearly 6 hours.
It was awful. It's horrendous. It's so nerve-wracking as well.
The jury returned with a verdict.
The defendant was convicted unanimously of murder.
On hearing the guilty verdict, Strettle just gasped in the dock.
He was sentenced to 26 years imprisonment, and he was given a concurrent sentence for approximately 8 years for the firearms offences.
Leslie Strettle pleaded guilty to assisting an offender and handling a firearm, and she was given 5 years imprisonment.
No, we went out and celebrated. I know we still lost Chris, but with some sort of justice.
Christopher Strettle. Just left him today. And that's somebody he's known all his life. That. Horrible. Killed my mate in cold blood, my Bezzy. Someone who'd make you smile for the rest of your life.
You know, he had no right to take his life, did he, and take him off the girls. Obviously, it always feels like there's something missing. And I feel sorry for the girls, because, you know, when they say, oh, come, their friends say, oh, just go and see my dad and ask my dad for this, and they can't do that. Who's going to walk them down the aisle, do you know? It's every little girl's dream, isn't it? Like, I see your dad walking you down the aisle. And just sometimes girls want their dad, don't they? It's horrible.